Hey kids, Flexing Teacher Weber here. I hope you're having a good day. I want to do a little review of all the things we've done with the multiplication of fractions. So the way we started out when we worked on the paper fraction action is we started out looking at what it means to actually multiply a fraction. So we did this by drawing diagrams. So we started out with the idea that multiplication of fractions is like finding the overlap of two fractions. So for example, in this first diagram, got to change the thickness of my pen. There we go. This first diagram, we're looking at, we want to show what 1/2 of 1/4 looks like. And that's the same as saying 1/2 times 1/4. Now, we already know what the answer is. We learned very quickly that the answer is 1/8. But what we want to do here is show how you get this answer. So what you do is you start with the second fraction. Start with the second fraction, 1/4. And we're going to divide this rectangle into 4 equal parts. And then shade in 1/4. And then what we're going to do is going the other way, horizontally, we're going to divide this in half and do the first fraction. We're going to shade in 1/2. Like that. So we've got 1/4 shaded in blue and 1/2 shaded in red. And if you look at, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 squares. And that's how you get the answer of 8, the denominator of 8. And it's also 2 times 4. And then the overlap of red and blue, the number of squares that show overlap is just one of them. I'll put an X through it. And that's how we get the answer of 1. The answer of 1 is 1 times 1. That's the overlap of 1/2 of 1/4. The blue part is 1/4, and the red part, this part here, is 1/2 of 1/4, which is 1/8. So that's how we show what the multiplication of fractions looks like. So if we look at another example here, we have 2/3 of 1/3, or 2/3 times 1/3. So what we'll do is we'll start with the second fraction because we want to show what amount of that fraction is. So it makes sense to start with the second fraction, and we'll divide this into thirds. And we'll shade in 1/3. And then using a different color, going the other way horizontally, we'll divide it in thirds the other way, like that. And since we're doing the first fraction is 2/3, we'll shade in 2/3, going horizontally. There's 1/3 shaded in, there's 2/3 shaded in. So we know the answer to this question is going to be 2 out of 9. Now where does the 9 come from? The 9 comes from 3 times 3, but it also comes from the number of little boxes we made. We made 9 of them, right there. Now where does the 2 come from? We know 2 times 1 is 2, but it also comes from 2 boxes that have both red and blue in them. So that's the first thing we did, is we started off showing what the multiplication of fractions means. And we also did that on the fraction action page from earlier in the week. Now the next thing we wanted to do was show just how we can get an answer. Okay, just how we can get an answer without the diagrams. So if you look at these examples here, we're not going to draw diagrams of these. And this is a section that has no calculators being used. So we're not going to use calculators either. But what we are going to do is we're going to simplify these fractions before we actually multiply them. So what you can do is I call it looking at the diagonal numbers. So I'm going to circle the diagonal numbers of this one. I'm going to circle 33 and 3. And what we do is we can use we have a special fraction sheet we can use that will help us reduce these. We have a golden factor sheet, it's called, and it shows us all the factors of the numbers from 1 to 100. So we can use this golden factor sheet to help us reduce these fractions. So what we want to do is we want to find the diagonal numbers, and we want to find the greatest common factor of 33 and 3. Now the greatest common factor of 33 and 3 is 3. So we're going to do a little mental division We're going to do 33 divided by 3 equals 11. And I'll cross out the 33 and I'll put 11. And then we're going to do 3 divided by 3 is 1. So I'm going to cross out the 3 and put a 1. Now we're going to look at the other pair of diagonal numbers here and here. And we're going to figure out the greatest common factor of 14 and 28. Well, the greatest common factor of 14 and 28 is 14. So I'm going to use a little mental division now. 14 divided by 14 equals 1. So I'm going to cross out the 14 and put a 1. And 28 divided by 14 is 2. So I'm going to cross out the 28 and put a 2. And now what I've done is I simplified these fractions before I've multiplied them. Now here's what's left. I have 11 times 2 on the top of the fraction, and I have 1 times 1 on the bottom. And now my answer is 22 over 1, or even simpler, just 22. So the idea in this section is to simplify the fractions first and then multiply. Let's look at another example. 27 over 20 times 60 over 18. I'm going to focus in on this one, and we're going to look at our diagonal numbers. 27, 18. And I want to find the greatest common factor that will divide into both 27 and 18. Well, the greatest common factor of 27 and 18 is 9. So I'll do some mental division now. 27 divided by 9 is 3. So I'll cross this out, put a 3. And 18 divided by 9 is 2. I'll cross this out and put a 2. Now I want to do the same thing with the other pair of diagonals, 20 and 60. Okay? The greatest common factor of 20 and 60 is 20. So I'm going to do some mental division. 20 divided by 20 equals 1. 60 divided by 20 equals 3. Now I'm going to write down what I have left. I have 3 times 3 as the numerator. I have 1 times 2 as the denominator. And when I multiply those, I get 9 over 2. And I don't want to leave that as an improper fraction. So remember, this means 9 divided by 2. So 2 goes into 9 4 times. Remainder 1 out of 2. So that's how you multiply fractions when you're just finding an answer. What I'm going to do in the next video is I'm going to show you how you estimate as well as multiply. And we'll also do a word problem as well. I hope that helps a bit. That's all for now. Flexing Teacher Weber, out.